This is not good. According to MSNBC News, aka what conservatives refuse to watch and call fake news, and then go and watch Alex Jones instead, a real trustworthy news source, Elon Musk says that the Department of Education no longer exists. Did they do it? Did they, like... Did they do it while I was away? Has it it's gone? They won? What? Well, shit. Well, damn, they defeated education in America. Their biggest enemy. If this is true and not some, like, Elon exaggeration, this is a massive win for conservatism. Destroying the American education system was one of the biggest gateways to winning America forever. Wait, that's not how that works? The fuck? Well, keep in mind, no matter how many, like, super duper naive people tell you Trump can't do this or that because the law says he can't, keep in mind, the Supreme Court has found him fully immune of all criminal charges while president. So if something is literally, if something is not literally he can't, as in, like, he can't do it, like, physically, he cannot it can't happen, but, like, maybe he won't do it. But if what you mean by he can't is he's not allowed to do it, make sure anything that falls under that category, you stop considering something Trump can't do. Trump cannot be pursued legally for any crimes he does. If he can do something with his power, but it would be illegal, he's going to do it. He can do it. There are no consequences for him doing it. And in many cases, there are things that the president may not have the power to do that he is going to do, because keep in mind, he has so much control over the government now. It's unanimous conservative victory across the entire government. All of it is MAGA. There's not really going to be any substantial pushback to anything Trump wants to do. So if there's something that Trump doesn't have the power to do, all he has to do is demand the people who do that they do it, and they will. So it's very possible that this isn't an exaggeration and rip the Department of Education, I guess.
The next department that appears to be on the chopping block is the Department of Education. Just earlier today, Democratic members of Congress were blocked from entering the department's headquarters. Democratic lawmakers had met outside the...
This has been what they've been doing, by the way. Like, across our government right now, the Democrats that exist have been getting blocked out of the government buildings. Like, this is happening all over Washington right now. They're locking up the buildings and not letting the Democrat representatives inside. They're not letting them see what's happening. They're not letting them make sure that nothing crazy is happening. The same goes for the Treasury, I think it was, where all of the Democrats were locked out of the Treasury and they hosted a big protest outside, demanding that the Republicans let them in. We are experiencing a full-on coup. There are no entities in place anymore to hold anyone accountable as they dissolve our government now. Trump fired, I think it was 11 inspectors general. Who here knows what the job of the inspectors general is? They oversee, just to answer the question, they oversee the DOJ, the Department of Justice. Do you know what the DOJ oversees and keeps in check? Donald Trump, the president, among many other things, but yes, Donald Trump, the president. Donald Trump can fire the people whose job it is to oversee the departments that oversee him. And our system was built such with the assumption that no president would ever blatantly use these loopholes, because if they did, it would be such an obvious abuse of their power, the American people wouldn't stand for it. The rest of the American government wouldn't stand for it. They would impeach him. They would oust him from power. The American people might even hold a revolution. These were probably the thought processes of our founding fathers, and why these loopholes were not closed. And so now, he fired them illegally, by the way, but guess what? Everything he does, period, he's immune from criminal the Supreme Court has given him a full get-out-of-jail-free card. He cannot be found legally guilty of anything, which adds even more to the credibility of his claim, by the way, that has fueled so many people to hate the quote-unquote liberal media, is that these media outlets report on Trump's criminal proceedings every time, especially when he was literally found guilty of 34 felonies and convicted. But the fact that Trump never gets jail time, it's always a slap on the wrist. He always runs out the clock. They let him go because they don't really care. People who've made accusations end up getting scared into dropping said accusations because his supporters are very ravenous. All these things happen, and these media outlets cover it. But because Trump never ends up in jail, he's still able to run. The perception of the average person who does not follow these things very closely at all is that it was all a big nothing burger that the lying, fake news media made a big deal about. Because when the media is talking about how Trump has been found guilty of 34 felonies and then he's president, like he runs, he doesn't go to jail, he's president, like the perception of most people who didn't follow it all that close, which is most people, is it was all a big nothing burger. Same goes for what everyone calls Russiagate, the Russiagate quote unquote hoax. Even though several people in Trump's literal campaign were sent to federal prison after they were found guilty of colluding with the Russian government in order to help Trump get elected, just because there was no evidence found that tied the plot with the Russian government directly to Trump himself, just to his heads of his campaign, he was let off scot-free. And everybody around him, that's why it's all new names now compared to 2016. It's because all those people went to prison or just dropped out because they didn't want to go to prison like everyone else did. So now it's all new names and faces with his administration now. And that's because he was hiring criminals. He was using them as fall guys too. A lot of people took the fall for him with the Russiagate stuff, but it worked. The fact that Trump never ended up in prison, like, think about it like this. Like, what's a good example? OJ. Let's think OJ. Granted, everyone watched the OJ trial, but that was in a time before the internet was as prevalent as it is now. If the OJ trial happened today, nobody would have watched it to the degree they watched it then. They would be following people talking about the OJ trial. If OJ had not, like if that happened today, I feel like everybody would be defending him and saying, well, he didn't go to prison, so like it must have just been a nothing burger. I'm pretty fucking sure that is the mindset most people would have nowadays. No one, the last court case that anyone followed to the degree that they followed the OJ case was the Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard thing, and that was mostly focused on due to like the whole Me Too movement thing, right? Like if Amber Heard lost, it was supposed to be like the symbolic loss of the Me Too movement, and then when she lost, that was like, for a lot of people online, they celebrated it as the death of the Me Too movement, because for a lot of people, the popular opinion has been that the Me Too movement has gone too far because of false allegations and stuff. And so, yeah, like, I'm getting a little bit stun-locked on this point, but the main thing I'm trying to focus on here is that there are no ways to keep Trump on a leash anymore. He can do whatever he wants, even if it's illegal, and nothing is off the table. I'm tired of people who are like extremely naive about politics talking about how there are guardrails to stop Trump from doing things. Like, there's just not. Like, let's not pretend that there actually are. Like Trump is going to impress us with how much he is going to fuck shit up over the next 4 years. And if you don't think that's the case, then you clearly haven't learned anything. We had Trump for 4 years, and going into 2016, if you said that a 9/11's worth of Americans would die every day for nearly a year due to Trump's presidency and his handling of a fucking worldwide pandemic that would kill millions of humans in a year, if I'm not mistaken, like that, telling someone that in 2016, right after Trump took office, they would laugh at you and call you a crazy, like, fear-mongerer and tell you you've got Trump derangement syndrome. No one, even on the left, would believe things would get that bad under Trump, right? No one would have predicted that. I assure you, we will be just as, if not more, impressed at how bad Trump manages to make things get in his second term.
To protest Donald Trump and Elon Musk's plan to abolish the department entirely, as well as attempting to seek a meeting with the department's senior leadership.
Are you sure the courts have been stopping him and the White House backed off? On some things, he can be delayed. But, like, dog, he literally illegally fired 10 of the people whose job it is to oversee the institution, whose job it is to oversee him. And there are now no consequences whatsoever, or redos or undos for what Trump did. They're fired now. And now the Republicans are locking Democrats out of federal buildings to keep them from doing their jobs. They're taking over the building and saying, yeah, you may have been appointed or elected or whatever, but, like, good luck getting in.
Yeah. Lawmakers were not only blocked by security holding the front door, but also by Department of Homeland Security.
Yep. And mind you, they've got the military, security, and in some cases even the cops on their side, helping them lock down these buildings to keep literal lawmakers and elected representatives out of their offices and from doing their jobs. When Trump sent the military to force California to drain water out of its reservoirs over 300 miles away from LA, because it's north of LA, and Trump believes that water travels south along the Earth's curve. So Trump sent the military and forced them to open up. We did a segment about it. He had the military go in, gave them 1 hour's notice, sent in the military, and they came in and opened up the dam and let the water through. I mean, it's just gonna irrigate some farmland 300 miles from LA, but, like, this is the kind of shit that he is doing. It's retarded in the first place, but it's not just that. It's also that he has the authority to just make this shit happen. Want to know another thing, by the way? Want to know another thing about how much Trump has been bending the rules and changing precedent and procedure? You know that plane that crashed into a helicopter? We speculated that it could be Trump's fault. Turns out it's even more Trump's fault than we ever could have considered. The reason why that plane crash happened was the Black Hawk helicopter wasn't supposed to be taking off and in the sky there at all. The reason why the helicopter was there, taking off and in the sky at that time, was because Donald Trump himself ordered an unscheduled emergency presidential evacuation drill at that moment, right then. And that's what they were doing. An unscheduled presidential evacuation drill. And a plane crashed into said Black Hawk helicopter they were using for the drill, and that is how the crash happened. Yep. I'm talking about the first big plane crash. Black Hawk crashed into a plane. No, the plane crashed into the Black Hawk. The Black Hawk was hovering. The plane crashed into it. Which, I mean, makes sense when you think about it for more than 3 seconds. How could the plane have been staying still for the helicopter to crash? Like, no, planes don't hover, helicopters do.
The police seen in multiple videos from members of Congress. Lawmakers were told by security guards stationed outside that nobody had accepted a meeting and that they needed an escort in the building in order to enter the building.
The door, he says he's a federal employee. He won't tell us who gave him permission to do this. All he knows is he's going to stand here and tell the members of Congress who are elected, who vote for the fund.
For the record, by the way, the live MAGA cope is already happening over this. As this woman points out, these are elected members of our government. And we've got one of our resident MAGA people in chat who said, in all caps, wrong, they are not elected. They are government workers. Yeah, they're government workers, but you realize Congress people are elected, right, Michael MW? Like Congress people are elected. Musk is not elected. Well, yeah, Musk absolutely wasn't, but these Congress people that aren't allowed to do their job. Congress is not blocked, smiley face. Okay, so you're just a troll. Neat. Half the time, this is what's so frustrating about, like, dealing with conservatives, dude. Like, why are they so evil? Congress is not blocked. As we're watching a video of Congress being blocked, and they put, like, the smiley face there for the trigger, like, factor, you succeeded at triggering me, I guess, but it's like, what is the purpose of being blatantly wrong? And also, like, you're watching the video of it happening in front of you. And it's like, if that is happening, why does it not worry you? Like, the possibility even that elected congressional representatives are not allowed to enter the building where they're doing their job. Like, why is that bad? Say one nice thing about Trump. I like the way that Trump speaks. It's pretty funny, and it clearly resonates with a lot of people. If Trump was not a genuinely good rhetorician, he would not have the amount of support that he has. Like, you can disagree that with his rhetoric, and you can think that his rhetoric doesn't appeal to you, but the numbers, despite everything and all of his actions, prove that he absolutely can speak to people and knows how to speak in a way that the average American gets and resonates with. They hear Trump and they're like, this guy's just like me. Like, I could have a beer with this guy. And that's something that Democrats in general are really bad at. Like, I think Trump is kind of the face of the right being really good at messaging, while, like, who's a good example of the left being really bad at messaging? Honestly, like Biden. Biden's a good example of the left being bad at messaging. Bro was, like, not great at speaking. He was good at doing presidential stuff and passing good policies, but when it came to talking about what he was doing, he wasn't good at it, you know? Like, it was very, like, he would stutter, his voice wasn't very powerful, and he had a hard time coming off as authoritative in the same way that Trump can. But yeah. Anyway. This is a big problem. If we're gonna counter this stuff, the left needs to get as good at rhetoric as the right tends to be.
Funding for all of them in this building, and for the student loans, and for the Title I families. He's going to tell us that we can't come in and talk with anybody. Is that right?
Joining me now is one of the lawmakers who tried to enter the Department of Education today, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, Democrat of Connecticut, and a 2016 National Teacher of the Year. It's a great pleasure, Congresswoman. And, let's just get right to the bottom. Who tried to stop you, and under what authority were they acting to block members of Congress? That's the part I have to wrap my head around. Who fund the very department that they're standing there blocking members from coming into the building?
Well, thank you, Michael, and it's great to be here. And that's a great question. We did not get an answer to that. The man who came out, he met us at the door. The door was locked, and then he came out and met us and said we were not allowed entry to the building. We had to be on a guest list. And when I said, well, what is your name? What is your title? All he would say is, I work for the Department of Education. Never said who he was, kept pulling out a badge and pulling it back quickly. But we said, we're members of Congress. We can come into the building. We can request a meeting. Would not even let us inside the building.
Amazing. It's just amazing. Well, it also kind of...
just to update you guys, remember, the conservative, like, MAGA, or, like, the people defending this, their response to it is, nuh-uh. Like, I can't let myself think that most conservatives are like that one guy in chat, whose response to seeing that shit on video is, they aren't elected representatives. And then when I point out they're Congress people and Congress are elected, they say, no, Congress isn't getting blocked. And then they add a smiley face. Because, like, very clearly that guy acknowledges, yes, Congress is getting blocked, and the right, like, the Republicans are cooing the government, and they're in favor of it. And they know that, like, their constant denial of what we're all watching and the smugness about it is infuriating to the average progressive or normal person. And so, once again, as I've always said, so much of conservative belief is about owning the libs. It's hard to sell a lot of people on the fact that this is something you should care about, because the libs are getting owned, guys. Like, how much better could you do to own the libs than to not allow the elected representatives that progressive parts of the country voted for to do the job that they were voted in to do? To illegally lock them out of buildings. They've got no recourse to do anything about it. They don't control the military and get to order them to come in and say, clear this building out, let us in. Trump can send the military or security or the Coast Guard or something to lock down a building for him. You can demand that, and they'll do it. The military has done things he's asked already that are ridiculous. Like, the libs are getting epically owned here, so nobody really cares. But we are watching a coup take place.
Begs the question, what do you do next? I mean, this is the fourth time or so that members of Congress have been denied access to federal property. It's not a question of what do Democrats do, what a Republican, what do members of Congress do when something like this happens? What do you think should happen next?
Well, I think that's really important. I think part of the problem is the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has ceded all of our Article 1 powers to the president. And in this case, the Speaker of the House should be saying we need to respect the separation of powers. But I know that is not going to happen. So we are bracing for lawsuits. We've sent letters to the department requesting a meeting. 96 members of Congress signed on to this meeting. Outside groups are gearing up to file lawsuits because we read Project 2025. We know what's next. We know what's coming. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump, this whole administration is going play by play in what we saw.
Remember, all the big Trump people, including, well, obviously, someone who's been invited to have dinner with and has been a big speaker for Donald Trump numerous times, Nick Fuentes, came out to say, now that Trump is finally, or I think also Dave Rubin and Tim Pool tweeted the same thing after Trump was announced that he was going to be the next president, like after it was announced that he won. They all tweeted, by the way, now that he's won, we can say it now. Project 2025 is the plan. LOL. Reminiscent of that one chatter we had earlier with the smiley face almost, but that was Nick Fuentes' tweet. By the way, Project 2025 is the plan. Lol. So yeah, there's no more ambiguity about it anymore. If you're curious about what's happening now, look at Project 2025. That's the blueprint of what we're about to experience for the next 4 years.
In this Project 2025. But one thing I don't think people understand. For me, it was important to go to the department because and request this meeting because I'm open to, if you want to audit the department, if you want to make reforms, let's talk about it. Let's work together and see what we need to do. They don't want to do that. They want to tear everything down, just like they talked about in your last segment. And I hope people understand what that means. A lot of the things that Republicans are complaining about that they don't like about the department with curriculum and things that happen in the school, those are local issues, not decided by the Department of Education. What the department does handle is the $1.6 trillion in student loan funds, special education, making sure that students aren't discriminated against, collecting data and statistics from school, preparing educators to teach our students, running Title I programs for our lowest income communities. All of those things will be affected. And people need to understand if those programs are cut, one of two things are going to happen. If the department is cut, one of two things are going to happen.
House Dems are dumb. Why don't they just call the cops? Whose orders do the Capitol Police follow? What was it a big deal? Who didn't tell the Capitol Police to do a thing on January 6th, and it was a big deal that he waited hours and hours and hours to say anything in reference, directed towards specifically the Capitol Police? It was Trump. If Trump is allowing this, if Trump just says, hey, don't go and let them in, I'm pretty sure they're just fucked. Aren't there other cops, though? I don't know. If you call 911 in the Capitol in D.C., I'm pretty sure you get Capitol Police. D.C.'s really small. Really, really, really small. There's this big... I've been there. There's this big... well, I haven't really been there so much as I've been through there. Drove through it on the way to New York. There is a big, circle of highways, and they're all really tall. And I swear to God, when you're at the tallest points of the bridges of those big overpasses and highways in DC, I'm pretty sure you can see the other side of the district. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, you can see one border and the opposite side's border. Like, it's that small, you know? Like, it's like a video game map. It's so small. I don't know if when you call the police in the Capitol, like if you call 911, if it goes to anyone other than Capitol Police Dispatch. I'm not 100% sure. Like, I don't know.
Either those programs are going to go away or their taxes are going to go up to fund their local school systems. Our children deserve better. 49 million children attend public school in this country. And for Elon Musk to come.
I don't believe public colleges that charge tuition should get federal funding. A lot of these colleges make profit in the billions. Insane. I think that's a fair point. Like, demanding free college, otherwise they get no federal funding, is really a more Democrat policy. The whole free college thing. Either get funded by tax dollars or get funded privately. You can't have it both ways. I agree with that. I think that's probably fair. There might be reasons why that wouldn't be good. Maybe these schools really do need both. But they make a lot of profit. And they got like super rich alum and stuff like that. They probably don't need the money. We're not talking about colleges, though, right? Like, colleges are very wealthy more often than not. Like, universities are very wealthy, well-off, like stable institutions. They could probably afford to go private, and they wouldn't have any problems. The real issue are private, like K through 8 schools, right? Or not even K through 8, K through 12 schools. That's the big concern. Public K through 12 schools being either no longer funded and available anymore, having to no choice but to use a charter school or a private school that you pay out of pocket for. Definitely not good. Definitely not good. K through 12 are funded by property taxes. The Department of Education is still responsible for all of that funding. You realize that you realize that without the Department of Education, there's no more public school. The system is broken.
Come in with no planning, no forethought, and just plow through these agencies with no.
All those systems, by the way, as well, for going from like K through 12 to college as well. Like programs like, was it FAFSA? I'm pretty sure FAFSA relies on money from the Department of Education, doesn't it? Or is that like a private grant or something? I didn't go to college, guys. I don't know all this stuff. There's a little bit of a gap in my knowledge. But I don't know. Maybe someone who did that. FAFSA is financial aid for college. Is it like a private grant? It's federal money. Okay, so that's federal money. Cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that goes through the Department of Education, right?
No plan to rebuild them or what's going to happen to the people that are affected is just completely wrong. And the members of Congress are going to stand up to that.
It appears that Elon Musk, Vice President Elon Musk, I guess, I don't know, he's got some role, some official role, thinks that the Department of Education is already dead. In response to Congressman Maxwell Frost's post about the DOE, he said, quote, "No such department exists in the federal government." You're an educator, a former teacher of the year, someone who knows education better than most.
You just know that Elon Musk came in his pants a little bit when he tweeted that.
You talked just a moment ago about the programs that are impacted both at the federal and state level. What does this ultimately mean for parents out there and school systems across the country that now will have to scramble, to your point, to figure out where those federal dollars come? Because a block grant is not going to cut it. And we know how block grants ultimately work, right?
Yes.
No, it is not just you. I am quiet in comparison to the video. I didn't realize, but the video volume is maxed, which always means my audio is unbalanced. Thank you for pointing it out. That has been 29 minutes of this segment with poor audio balancing before someone called it out. I do appreciate someone finally did it, though. Let's try to make that substantially faster in the future, though, chat. Let's try to make it way quicker that you guys let me know when my audio balancing is bad. I can never tell, okay? I'm not watching my stream. Only you guys can tell me when my audio is fucked, okay?
And that's just it. Elon Musk's children don't need public schools. They're not relying on the services that are provided in public school. Donald Trump's children don't need public schools. It's my friends and neighbors. It's the kids that I taught. 7.5 million children receive special education services, wraparound services, accommodations, IEPs, the things that they need in order to learn and meet their educational goals. So many of our rural communities that don't have charter schools, that wouldn't be able to take advantage of some of these voucher programs. People need to.
Well, homeschooling is going to be the norm now. That's the goal. I don't know if you know this, but like, especially in Florida, homeschooling is really popular, even when I was a kid. And I got homeschooled for a couple of years, but then went back into public schooling. It was my homeschooling was all right. I did something called FLVS, Florida Virtual School, or whatever it's called. I think it's literally just Florida Virtual School. And it was pretty solid. It wasn't like some right-wing like propaganda education or whatever, obviously, because like it has to have been verified by the Department of Education. This is a valid, reputable school. But most kids that I knew who were homeschooled did not use like FLVS. They had like some Christian conservative private homeschooling program or plan. And it's usually specifically tailored for like hyper religious families, like even like really niche cult-like religions like Jehovah's Witnesses have their own program for homeschooling where the curriculum does not contradict any of their cult's beliefs or whatever. So that's probably going to become the norm a lot. Like the next generation of children are going to grow up getting a homeschooled education and will only be surrounded by the people and ideas that their parents approve of. I didn't grow up in the Panhandle. I grew up on the Nature Coast. Central West Coast of Florida. Like, most of my life I spent like an hour north of Tampa. Most of it I spent in Tampa. So, around Tampa to like Homosassa, that range along the west coast of Florida is my stomping grounds.
To think about that. All of those children will be denied a public education. When we had our committee hearing yesterday, the chairman said 1 million students access vouchers for private charter schools. They want to take all this money from the Department of Education and put it into voucher programs. There are not enough spaces for all of the children. What are we going to do with all of these kids? You know, and people really need to think about that. A nation.
This is all part of the plan. This is all part of the plan. How often have you heard a conservative in response to, you know, the pro-life conservatives, the ones who refuse to allow abortion to be legal because they don't want women to be allowed to terminate a pregnancy? Let's say you get pregnant, you have a child, and you can't afford to feed your child. How many times have you heard a conservative say, well, if you can't afford to feed your child, why do you have a kid? How many times have you heard, if you can't feed your kid, why'd you have one? But hey, if you got pregnant and you try to get an abortion, can't let that happen. Can't allow that. Because the default position is that unless you are 100% willing for that sex to result in a child and to raise that child, then you should never have sex. Thus, they only want people having sex after getting married. They only want people having sex for the sake of reproduction. This, of course, leads to a more sexually repressed society, a society that explores their sexuality less and hardens gender roles and expectations even more, kind of rewinds us back to like the 70s and the 60s where people were a lot more ingrained in what was expected of them. And the standards for what made a man and a woman were a lot more ingrained, a lot more strict. A lot of these things come from sexual tension and like sexual frustration that has in a lot of ways been culturally relieved by society becoming a lot more sexually liberated. But as things start to get more pent up and we start to see the laws constrict people's ability to be sexually active without serious, devastating consequences, then there is a very good chance that we're going to see a cultural shift to be even more hyper-conservative because people, like the next generation of young people, are going to be growing up not too differently culturally outside of like tech and whatnot from the way that like kids in the 60s grew up. Their goal is to create a new baby boomer generation. That has been the right's goal for a while. To turn Gen Z was the first attempt. It failed. Now their goal is to turn Gen Alpha into the next baby boomer generation. A big, high population, massive generation that overwhelmingly votes a certain way and isn't going anywhere anytime soon. That is their goal. If they can create a massive, high population generation of young people who get a really bad education and are completely primed for conservatism, well, look at how the baby boomers have traded the country for as long as they've existed. Having another baby boomer generation is how the right keeps their stranglehold over America for the next 100 years.
That doesn't invest in their children, that doesn't prepare them to be global citizens, to meet the workforce. We are going to lose a whole generation of kids. And it's not just the Department of Education. They're going after funding for Head Start and
I didn't pre-watch. When you got Congress people saying, yeah, it's fucking over, dude. Right after I say, yeah, it's fucking over, dude, it might be fucking over, dude.
HHS. I don't understand this fascination or fixation on pulling money back that we use as resources for our children. And they talk about government efficiency. They talk about the budget. They're not going to the top for all of those big ticket items, like military contractors, like closing some of the tax loopholes that they gave to billionaires. They're taking money from the most vulnerable children, from our global aid programs, a fraction of the budget.
A really big worry is Trump. Obviously, he's talked about the fact he's going to do it, but Trump is obviously going to go after federal funding for people's Medicare, like their medical care, sorry. So obviously, the ACA is not long for this world. Trump wants to kill it, has yet to suggest a working alternative to the ACA because the idea of terminating the ACA is very unpopular. They tried to call it Obamacare to get people to hate it, but like so many people benefit from it. It's like really hard to sell people on it being bad. So unless you suggest you've got something better, which is what Trump does as a reason for why he wants to get rid of it, to replace it with something better than it, that's the only way you can sell people on that. But like a lot of people are going to get fucked over if Trump destroys these programs, these federal funding programs. Like, for instance, someone in chat who is a supporter of Trump and is pretty chill. Like we're not like shit talking them. They hang out, you know, they hear what I have to say. They're respectful. But they deal with Mikey BME in chat deals with an autoimmune issue. I've known a few people with different autoimmune disorders, lupus being the most common of them. And that shit is massively debilitating and relies on a constant regimen of immunosuppressants because immunodisorders are basically your immune system killing you. In one way or the other. It might be under or overactive, the most common kind being an overactive immune system that attacks your body unless suppressed by medication. And if you don't have those immunosuppressant medications, for a lot of people with those diseases, which are genetic more often than not, mind you, they have no choice. Like they had no say in it. Like they rolled their dice when they were created, and they got a bad dice roll on that, right? Like federal funding to take care of people dealing with these problems is necessary for a variety of reasons. For one, it's basic, you know, humanity. We're the richest country in the world. We should obviously be taking care of people like that. But like beyond that, if you want to have a functional and operational country, you want a strong, healthy workforce, and a country that refuses to pay to keep its people strong and healthy, it's going to suffer. You want Americans to be as strong and healthy as possible, and if Trump attacks these federal programs that help to ensure that, they don't achieve it 100%. They could be better. But if Trump does not provide a good alternative, it's going to be fucking bad for a lot of people, including many of his own supporters. And that's not... I joke about how, like, haha, you get what you vote for, but we don't actually want Trump to do any of these things, and for these people to end up suffering because he does those things. So it's a bit worrying. It's a bit worrying that, like, next in the chopping block might be the ACA. He went after the ACA in his first term, after all. He campaigned on destroying the ACA. It's scary.
That really helps invest in the future of this country. And parents need to think about that. Democrat parents, Republican parents, grandparents, everyone needs to understand exactly what this means if the federal government,
No, the skin shit is real as fuck, Mikey BME. I don't know if it might be like just a coincidental thing, but do autoimmune disorders make your skin blotchy? Because everyone I've met with an autoimmune disorder gets bouts of blotchy skin. Is that what it tends to do? Some do. My face gets a rash. You get a rash on your face. Yeah. So you get blotches. Yeah. That shit's real. Dude, chronic illness, bro. Chronic fucking illness is one of those things. I thought I had chronic illness for the rest of my life when I got long COVID. Thankfully, my young, healthy body recovered in the long run. But, like, the idea that I was going to have chronic illness for the rest of my life was so terrifying. That shit is no joking matter.
Department of Education is stripped and those services are lost. Before and after school programs, lunch programs, services for students with special needs, all of our resources that schools have, our sports programs, our music programs, all of those things gone. Districts are going to have to make tough decisions about what they can keep. And
this has happened on a state level for a while now. A lot of red states don't like art, music, and classes like that. They also aren't really big fans of recess as well, and that's why federal laws were passed by Democrats that required all states mandate a certain amount of outdoor recess time for students during the school day. I think the minimum is 15 minutes of outdoor time for like a 7-hour school day or whatever. Which, I remember in Florida, I think it was for the first 3 grades of my schooling, I had art and music classes, and they were completely phased out entirely by the time I got to like 3rd or 4th grade. And I remember just thinking, oh, I guess I just aged out of art and music. They just don't teach us that anymore. But I remember my mom would rant about how they defunded those things and they're not offered anymore. And that was weird. Like, I don't know. Eventually I ended up going to a school that did offer a like elective music class in middle school, and in high school they had like a band and everything. But there was a while there where like through K through 5, I think they just got rid of those classes like art and music in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, to be fair. I'm pulling from memory of my childhood and not like reading news stories of the time or something like that. So take it with a grain of salt. But my understanding is they've already done this on a statewide level in red states where they've like eliminated lower grades. They've tried to eliminate recess, which is, God, like one of the most evil things you could possibly fucking imagine. Like, good job being a literal codename Kids Next Door villain, bro.
Our kids will have the bare minimum in schools, and teachers will not be prepared.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. This isn't fucking good, guys. Isn't it cool that, like, the world's richest man is cheering this shit on? All right, guys. Now is when we read the comment section and we find out if the people in the comments are deranged and are mad at MSNBC for reporting on this, or if they're mad about their country getting, like, subverted. Let's find out. Quote, "The secret to freedom is in educating the people, whereas the secret to tyranny is keeping them ignorant." Robespierre. True. Okay, that's a good quote. That's definitely related to the situation. Ooh, a George Carlin quote, my favorite comedian. "Governments don't want a population capable of thinking. They want obedient workers. The people," I'm going to say it as much like George Carlin spoke as I can. "People just smart enough to run the machines and just dumb enough to passively accept their situation." I think tonally that's how he said it. And yeah, that is a classic quote from our boy George. Do not look up how he died. So does that mean you're going to refund everybody's taxes that paid into the school system? No? What? I don't know if this is somebody, like, directing this at, like, Trump. Like, no? Like, obviously not. Like, is that supposed to be sarcastic? I guess it's maybe a sarcastic question. If the Department of Education no longer exists, no one should pay their federal student loans back, period. I mean, won't that, like, I don't have student loans, so I don't know what impact that has, but I can only assume it would decimate your credit. Your credit's pretty important. Like, if your credit's too low, you can't rent anything, like, at all. Not even an apartment to live in. So, like, you might still want to pay your student loans if that goes in your credit, dude. Other than that, if there's no real consequences to play, I don't know what consequences there are to not paying your student loans. What happens? What happens if you don't pay your student loans ever? Eventually, your student loans will be put into a default and you may lose federal loan benefits, have your wages garnished, get barred from federal student loan aid, among other consequences. Your loan holder may sue you as well. If you ignore the court date or the court's orders, that could land you in jail. Damn. So by the looks of it, they will start to garnish your wages by pulling money out of your bank account automatically, and they'll try to sue you and maybe even, like, take your house or something. I don't even know. And if that doesn't work, they'll sue you, and if you don't show up to court, you'll go to jail. So, yeah. You should probably still pay your student loans. Probably still do that. All I know is if the Department of Education doesn't exist, then my student loans don't either. We'll have to find out. It's crazy Congress couldn't get into the building, but a bunch of strangers were able to storm into the Capitol building. Well, yeah, the Capitol Police would have shot all those Congress people dead on the spot. They're Democrats. For all those who voted for him, I remind you that he said it several times throughout his campaign that he was planning on doing this very thing. Homeland Security agents are preventing congressional representatives from entering a federally funded agency building. What? The unraveling of the American experiment in real time. I don't know why this book is so hard to find, but after finally getting vibrations of manifestation by, I don't know why this person is this is like a bot or something. When I saw Trump's lawyer arguing to the Supreme Court that he should have immunity from official acts being considered criminal, I knew that it was a bad news. Here it comes. Like, I'm actually curious, like, fully respectfully, Mikey BME, how do you feel about Trump successfully getting the Supreme Court to decide that acts he pursues as president, even if illegal, he can never be found criminally responsible for them? Because they would, like, any act he commits while president is now considered an official act in the Supreme Court, which he's appointed, the majority of, has the full decision over whether or not Trump can, even on an individual basis, be found guilty of a crime, like, outside of office. Like, I want to know, like, from someone who is because Mikey BME is a chill person. They're like the Trump supporter in chat who isn't, like, they aren't here to trigger libs, right? And so I want to know, because I know that you're not just like a lying, like, troll. Like, I want to know how you feel about that, because it's so hard to ask conservatives how they feel about something, because more often than not, they'll just troll you in response, because they want to have fun. And having a legit, honest convo, it's so fucking valuable to me when it comes to talking with someone who supports Trump. Like, to give, like, a real, like, no, this is just seriously how I see the situation, is very valuable for my insights into, like, why the other side thinks what they do. I don't know, man. Like, I feel like this situation has got to be, like, worrying to you if you're an American and you're, like, in the know, right? Like, just as an American, you have to have that inherent distrust of the government, and now that Trump and his crew are the government, like, I feel like now that they're doing these things, it's like, okay, well, now we all have to be on board with calling it out, right? I don't know. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it entertaining, enjoyable, or educational, then perhaps consider leaving a like, a thumbs up. Totally free, by the way. It really does help the channel immensely and means so fucking much. I really do appreciate it. Same goes to everybody who leaves a comment and subscribes and rings the bell icon to turn on all notifications so that YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload any new videos in the future. Same goes for everybody who follows my social medias down below in the description, and all of those who decide to go the extra mile and support me directly with their financial support via donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub to someone else on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or by supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or even buying merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you so much for watching, as always, and I hope you have a good one.